Good morning. Would you please rise as you are willing and able and join us in Song 1008 in the green skinny hymnal.
Thanks, it's a page turner.
Good morning. And welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Nathan Whitehead. I am a member of the Coach Committee, the Committee on Assessing Congregational Health. We are the ears of the congregation. We welcome any concerns, questions, compliments that you might have about things that are going on in the church. If you have anything that you want to discuss with somebody or a question and you're not sure who to reach out to, you can reach out to the folks with the yellow name tags. So that's me, Dennis Monti, Anne-Marie Geppert, Jay Kniff, Allison Beeland, and our newest member of the coach committee is Denise Hurd. So please see us if you have any concerns. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. Please join us in the lower level after the service for our coffee hour, and today we'll have a potluck. Newcomers may enjoy introductory conversations downstairs at the welcome table with some of our members. Let me see here. During the service, we have supervised nursery for toddlers and religious education classes for the children and youth. Please see our religious education coordinator, Natalie, if you have any questions and for more information. And should you need to leave the service at any time, there are a couple areas where the service is also broadcast. The ushers can direct you back there. And our UU principles begin with our pledge to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. As we are a welcoming congregation, we welcome into our community people of all races, sexual orientations, belief systems, ages, including those who are young or old, who are fidgety and make youthful noises. These little humans represent our future, and we welcome everybody into our meeting house. Have a couple announcements this morning. We're getting close to the summer, and so the religious education kids will be having a more relaxed curriculum. So they're looking for a few volunteers throughout the summer who they're going to be spending some time outside, playing on the playgrounds, doing some gardening projects. So if you would like to help or have a green thumb and would like to help during the Sundays, please see Natalie. And also Linda has an announcement.
Just a reminder, Linda Brown, and just a reminder, Nathan mentioned the potluck, but the price of going to the potluck is to attend the congregational meeting, which is immediately after service. The way we're going to operate is we will have a table in the back. We'll have the agendas and the materials for the meeting, and we need to have everybody check in so that we can establish quorum. So after the service, just go and if you need to take a quick bathroom break, okay, but don't go and get coffee or anything. Check in, get your materials, and we'll hopefully have a short meeting so we can all enjoy our buffet. Thanks.
There are additional announcements in your order of service, so please check those out for all the other events upcoming.
Could I get one?
Sure.
I'm bringing my harpsichord next week, and we're going to do a concert, and the funds, it's donations, whatever you want to donate, and all the donations go to the church. It's in the afternoon, right? It's in the concert's in the afternoon at 3. Thank you.
That sounds awesome. Also, please, reminder to silence your cell phones. And for our chalice lighting, big or small, be kind to all. We light our chalice flame to support the extending of our circle of compassion to all living things, allowing us to all find peace. Please join me in reciting the litany from the order of service. You do not have to be good. Have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the praises and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clear blue air, are heading home. Whoever you are, not matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
It's good to see so many of you here this morning. I know that the roads are a challenge. It depends on which road you go down, how far it will allow you to. But this morning on the way in, speaking of wild geese, there were 2 geese and 5 of their family in between them. And they were just walking across Drake, and everybody stopped. So the geese didn't stop, they kept going. So it's wonderful that they can adapt to us borrowing some of their space from them. The Lakota Sioux Indians, Native American Indians, which now we try to refer to Native American Indian groups as First Nations, they have a ritual called the giveaway. And during the giveaway, which is called Wapani for them, they choose a special day, and on that special day, everyone would bring something to give away to somebody else. And sometimes it's a physical, material thing, and sometimes it's an action or something that is going to assist somebody else. Like they might help wash their clothes, or they just might be there for them when they're ill. All of you in this congregation know that we have many, many volunteers at work all during the year. And so today we're going to acknowledge the Wapani and the way that they've given away. And we're going to start with the religious education teachers. So we need Natalie and Kelly, and we need all the kids that are in the room to come up and help them.
No, just come sit here like we usually do.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I'll do this part, and you can do the next part. Okay. I should have had this ready. Oh, my goodness. Let's do it this way. Whoop, wait, sorry, Elliot. Let's do it this way and so more people can see you. Okay, today... Oh, wow. I didn't see all of you out there. That's great. I only saw about 6. So you've been working real hard, and Natalie Case is our religious education coordinator. Listen to what she's got to say to everybody.
Okay, so we have something really special for you today. Our kids really, really appreciate all of the volunteers that come and help on Sunday mornings, and I do too. I have to say my heart is so full with how much this church just steps up to do what needs to get done. I asked for volunteers, and we had 3 classes open all year long, which is a big deal for a church our size. So thank you so much. And so the kids decorated pots for you. And as I hand them out, I'll tell you who decorated it, and we gave each of them titles, which the kids came up with, and we have some poets among us. So there's some really, really beautiful sentiments that are carried in these pots. How we'll do it, I'm just going to read out all the names, because we're going to try and get through this in a timely manner. But if you know that you're a teacher volunteer, go ahead and line up over here to the right, and then you'll pass in front here, and I'll give you the pot, and I'll I'll tell everybody what the title is and who made it. So we have quite a list of names. Here we go. This is what it takes to take care of our kids. So Gloria Tweedy, Donna Hicks, James Tedesco, Michael Murphy, Charlotte Davis, Paul Bassina, George Rourke, Betty Marshall, Yvonne Wyborny, Barb Eglinton, Anne-Marie Gebhardt, Marianne Moore, Sally Richards, Janice Messer, Hope Sorensen, I hope I'm saying the last names right, Stephen Vimmer, Hannah Donegan, Lori Smith, Megan Chenoweth, Linda Brown, Mert Church, Bev Church, Maggie Whitehead, Libby Berger.
Whoa.
So that's
That was a
that's
lot of
24
helpers, huh?
people. That's a lot of people that it takes. So it looks like we have a bunch of people that are missing. So I'm just going to read through these anyways. I just want you guys to hear what the kids created because it's so good. You guys did such a good job. So it's going to be a little random.
Is this your pod? Listen and see if this one's your pod that you did.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this one is Tornado Aliens created by Emmett.
Emmett, they're talking about your pod. Barb got your pod.
This is Field created by Harper.
Charlotte.
Let's see what is. That one was created by Marcy, I think. Oh, it just says thank you. Oh my gosh. This is called The Daylight of You by Dexter.
Oh, Dexter, that's cool.
Thank you. This one is called Cursive and Love by Dante.
Cool.
This one is called A Beautiful Sky by Marcy. This is going to be for you and Mert together. Is that okay? This is Rainbow by Emery. I'm working on it. This is Sunshine Clouds by Jude. This is Mr. Patch by Killian. Oh my goodness, you got a real special one here. This one is Lightning Bolt, A Star, and a Mystery by Jude. I will say, he poured so much love into that one too.
I think he wants it.
This one, the sun shines over everything, alive or dead, by Lucas.
Thank you, Lucas. I think we're going to sing the song now. What? We're going to sing.
So the last one we have here is The Sun Shines Over All Hearts, Good or Bad by Lucas. Again, thank you so much. My heart is so full with how you guys showed up for our RE program this year, and I appreciate it so much, and I know our kids do too.
So as the choir sings their song, I'm going to ask, let's see, did you pick somebody here for? Okay. All right. All right, there you go. And thank you, kids, for all your hard work. And you, is Emily? Emery. All right, Emery, you're going to follow Emery, and the choir's going to come up here and sing a song, okay? Okay. It doesn't matter if we fold it. So I switched things around a little bit to give the kids some relief and move back to religious education where they can relax a little. We'd like to do volunteer recognition for all the adult committees. And so if you are a chair of Building and Grounds or the board, fundraising, the Memorial Garden, personnel, publicity, social events, if you're a chair, please start coming up so that you can hear the sermon today. So we need you, John, out there, and Sunday services care team, Denise, finance, Paul's not here, membership, anybody that's on membership, program council, anybody, the RE people are already done, social justice, and technology. So these are the chairs. Linda's the board chair. Liz Knight is the chair of our Sunday service committee. George does membership and
He can
social
represent-
events.
He can represent finance.
And finance. And
Fundraising.
John is building and grounds, and Kelly is religious education, and Denise Hurd is the care committee. So if you've served on any of these committees, please come up also. So the committee chairs like to party, I know that. And so the committee chairs, Libby, you're a committee chair of nominating. Which one of these would you like?
I'll try the one on top.
Oh, that's, thank you, Libby. And so these are insulated bags for you to go out and party at your local Costco and buy whatever refrigerated items you need and put them in these little bags. So, who do we have here, John? Would you hold those and pass them down to the rest of the chairs? And do we have all the chairs taken care of? Now, if you're a chair of the committee, George, I don't know who's on your committee, but all the people on your committee get one of those bags. And John, do you have people that are, you don't have anybody on your committee?
Well, maybe the people who've been working on
If they're not here, we can't acknowledge them right now. We're, thanks, thanks. Here's more. And Denise, do you have ushers out there that haven't come up yet? Please don't be shy. Harry, aren't you on a committee? Endowment? Yes.
Sorry, I'm gonna grab
If you're on a committee, would you please come up? Thank you. I know it's tough to be thanked because I know you like to all be humble. And anybody from your committee here? No. If you've been an usher, please come up. Thank you. Dennis, you're on coach. You have your bag. Okay, so now is when we get to do this and this. So thank you for all your hard work. Did everybody that's a chair, anybody in that?
do we need some more? We need some more.
Okay. Yep.
And there's Jay.
Would you hand this to Jay? Thank you. So without all these volunteers, this congregation would not be as strong as it is and be able to not just reach out to one another, which we do when somebody's sick and there needs to be casserole, a little train, but also to reach out to the larger community. All of you have been extremely generous this year with your giveaway. Whenever there was some flooding in other states, we had special contributions given to Freedom House, and you've all come through. So all of that is really appreciated. If you are a first-time visitor, we would ask that just your presence be a gift to us for our offering. If you're a pledging member to the congregation, we know that your pledge usually comes through in the mail. During our offering, we share these words that are on page 4, if you would read with me together. This gift we now bring, this present, this token, these words can convey it, the joy of this day. When grateful we come, remembering, rejoicing, this contribution we now offer in honor and praise. And we're going to use the teal hymn book again. And this is a favorite hymn for many of you, and I know that we're going to feel grandly supported to have the choir helping us. 1064 in your teal hymn book. Please stand as you are willing and able, because you're going to want to sway. Trust me. Does anybody in the choir?
Measures, right? Is after the first 3 measures?
After 8 measures. Okay, I'll get you in. All right. And we're going to sing 2 verses. 2 verses. Okay. Thank you, Terry. In the fall, we're going to have a service that we do like Music 101, so that we know, for instance, it says Blue Boat Home, but it's Blue Boat Home because the notes, for those of you that read notes, indicate that. But most importantly, in the meantime, all of the volunteers that got one of those little bags, what they got, one of the things they got in their little bag is Laffy Taffy. Some of the best times I remember in my Unitarian Universalist experience were early in the years at the Birmingham Church and on Woodward. And I would stand next to my friend, and we would either sing the song and the hymn in a lovely way, or we would just laugh at the absurdity that nobody was singing it right. So you either breathe in and out and you sing, or you breathe in and out and you laugh, and it is all good. So we, as a beloved community, share the laughter, we share the tears. Some of you have had a smooth and easy week. Some of you have some bumps going on in your life that you would like to bring your attention to, as we will share a moment of silence afterwards, and also draw the attention of the congregation too. So if you have a joy or concern that you would like to share, would you please step up to the microphone so that we can invite you to acknowledge that and maybe even light a candle.
You really missed out. We had some great speakers, and I'm going to ask real fast if they'll stand. If they're here, we have several that are here. Tim and James, Jay, Dennis, Yvonne, Beverly. Who are we missing? Was that 7? Oh, and Linda. Where is she? Oh, okay, and Linda Brown. But what a great night. Thank you all for your help.
Where an 8-year-old would name their art, "The sun shines over all, alive or dead." But Lucas is visiting his grandfather this morning with his dad and his brothers, but the art is particularly moving to me this morning. My stepmother's traveling this month to visit my stepsister.
itself over its 150 plus years, and finding a way to present things that are political without becoming over political and tipping the blue boat home into the ocean. I'm adding a somber concern. It may not be, it would be a concern on all of your levels at different levels. And what I want to say is I do believe that the personal becomes political and the political is personal, and as Unitarian Universalists, so many of you have fought for different issues across the time of your life. I brought this hanger today, and I'm going to leave the paper on the hanger. And I hope that the paper can stay on the hanger, and I hope that the paper can stay on the hanger, and this hanger can go back into my closet and hang up a sweater or a coat. We're living in extremely challenging times. Abortion laws are being threatened. The freedom of choice is being threatened. My views on abortion are not the same as your views on abortion. However, the right to choose and to not have the extreme laws that are being discussed in Missouri and Alabama to be put into effect and endanger women's lives are being discussed, and this is a reality that could happen. And so I remember back in the 70s that women and men and grandmothers and teenagers would wear little hangers to remind us. And probably like Liz, I didn't know I was going to get emotional about this. But we need to make our boys and our girls and our women and our children safe. And what is happening right before our eyes, I don't think is going to make this country a safer place. So we have great social justice here. There are many things that we can do on that behalf and in that regard. And if you would like to be involved in any of those initiatives, please see me after service or contact me. My information is in the order of service all over. And this candle is for all the concerns and the joys that brush across our hearts. And it's also for creating a sanctuary of space where we can make an announcement that goes a little longer, make a personal announcement on the fear that we're walking into, and also get emotional. We used to call it in the old days crying. I was crying. Now it's so nice, I guess. We'll talk about some words and how we change them. Now we just say, I was getting emotional. And it's just so, kind of nondescript. But this is a sanctuary of safe place. And I'm glad you're here to give your attention to all that was spoken and unspoken. Nancy Wood is one of my favorite poets, and she writes these words on connections. Every time we take a breath, we become the universe. The very moment of creation is contained in us, and then it passes on to the rocks and the trees and the animals and the fish. The old ones say the essence of life is in the water, the wind, earth, breath, fire, and bone, but most of all in breath, our first connection. To the elk, to the hawk, and the bear, and the buffalo, and without breath, there is no connection, and without connection, there is no creation. Without creation, no breath. This is the sacred circle of life, unbroken, that each of us stands in our place and becomes a part of. Today's sermon is brought to you by the the Universalist Unitarian. We'll work on that name change later. Church of Farmington. And we have a really nice event in the fall, the auction, and the Bays were the lucky winners of the auction title. And so they challenged me with this, and I appreciate the challenge and apologize for the confusion on the date, but we did get it in before the end of the church year. As we look at animal rights and the necessity for us to be advocates, we can go all the way back to the 1200s with St. Francis of Assisi, Italy, who befriended and blessed the animals. It is said that he was no stranger to walking great distances to share good news. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's walk great distances and share good news. One story says that he and his companions were making a trip, and suddenly Francis spotted this great number of birds from all varieties. There were doves and crows and all sorts of birds, and they swept in for a moment, not like the movie, more like with Diana's gentle music playing in the background. It was a peaceful moment. He left his friends and he ran to the birds, who patiently waited for him, and he greeted them in his usual way, expecting them to scurry off as he spoke, but they didn't move. They were filled with awe, as all of you are every time you hear a sermon, correct? And they just waited and took spots in the trees for a while and listened to St. Francis's word. And he said to them, "My brother and sister birds, you should praise your Creator and always love that Creator. The Creator gave you wings and feathers and all the things that you need. It is God who made you noble among all creatures, making your home in thin, pure air. Without sowing or reaping, you receive God's guidance and protection." At this, the birds began to spread their wings and stretch their necks out and gaze at Francis, rejoicing and, of course, praising God in a wonderful way according to their nature. Then Francis walked right through the middle of them and turned around and came back, touching their heads and their bodies with his tunic. And so he had this way, and then he became the patron saint of animals. So on October 4th, I think next year it's time to do it. We'll probably do an outdoor blessing of the animals for reasons you can imagine. Some of you in this congregation take those kind of relationships with animals and you just say, well, I have a pet. I love my animal, and my pet's name is so-and-so, and he delights me or she delights me in certain ways. Some of you take it the next step further. When I was living in Colorado, I went up into the mountains on a hike when the knees were good and young and ready to do that. And I was way up by a lake, and I held my hand out, and I had, just some bites of granola bar. And here, this beautiful little bird, it looked like a wren, but it had some blue on it. It came and ate out of my hand. I was delighted. I don't know the name of the bird. I'm not sure what song it sang. Some of you would, because you went to the next step, and you're more of those J's on the Myers-Briggs type, and so you look into things more deeply, and you know the name and the sound of the bird. And then there are others in this room that go to the next step. They not only know the sound and the name of the bird, they know that you shouldn't be feeding the bird granola bars. They become concerned with the habitat of the bird, and they become involved in advocates at a deeper level other than the pure joy. But this is where it starts, with the pure joy. And so when you have that kind of connection and that kind of attitude, you tend to go to the next step. This is what ethics people would call biocentrism. It encompasses all the environmental issues and ethics, and it extends the status of a moral object from human beings, and it extends it out to all beings in nature. Biocentric ethics calls for rethinking of the relationship between humans and nature. It states that nature does not exist simply and only to be enjoyed or even consumed or used by humans, but that humans are simply only one species among many. The four foundational ideas of a biocentric outlook are: humans and all other species are members of the Earth's community. All species are a part of a system of interdependence. All living organisms pursue their own good in their own ways, in their own natures. Human beings are not inherently superior to all living things. So with that biocentric view, individual species are a part of the living biosphere. It observes the consequences of reducing biodiversity on both small and large scales and points to, yes, an inherent value, but with all species. And so as Unitarian Universalists, our seventh principle is to affirm and promote the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part. I wish they would have added the word merely, of which we are only merely a part. It reflects this view as well. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not see ourselves as the sole decision maker for all life, but rather co-creators with all life. Understanding animals' characteristics as whole beings with needs rather than how they serve us, realizing that they have an intellect and intuition, they have communication techniques, for instance, that might be just or even more evolved than ours, and we just merely tap into this true bit of knowledge, knowing that the full capacity is this principle at play, knowing that we have to continue to use our learning and our connection so that we do not fall into the place that we've heard many and some of you were taught, that you were stewards over all the world. So you were humans and you were the top, and you could make the decisions over all the world. That's not what we see ourselves as Unitarian Universalists. This biocentric ethics included Albert Schweitzer's ethics, which he referred to as a reverence for all life, and Pete Singer's ethics on animal liberation, spoke about keeping everything equal. Albert Schweitzer was a Unitarian. This reverence for life principle was a precursor of the modern biocentric ethics, in contrast to the traditional ethics. So there wasn't a higher or lower. Pete Singer argued that non-human animals deserve the same equality of consideration that we extend to human beings. And the Buddhists refer to all sentient beings. May there be peace and loving kindness in the world for all sentient beings. So this concept is expressed across the board. Instead of using words that are maybe not familiar with us, like this morning when I was stumbling a little bit. I've been known to do that. That's what human nature is all about. So we say Native American, and then we crawl our way around, and we remember, oh, it's First Nations. And so we've said Native American, we've corrected ourselves, and we move on. And the intention is there to say and use the right terminology. Words do matter. So instead of climate change, now the preferred term is climate emergency. It's up to you. You can still use climate change, but climate emergency has a different kind of impact. Global heating over global warming. And so sometimes you might use wildlife rather than biodiversity. Biodiversity kind of keeps it in your head, and it talks about diversity, which is lovely, but it kind of puts it out there. Wildlife names it and then gives you all kinds of thought as you stumble through your own thoughts. What's the difference? Well, wildlife. Aren't geese wildlife? Why are they walking across Drake? They're walking across Drake because every corner is being built up. You all made a decision in this church years ago, I understand, not to sell your property in the back. And so you see deer, you see gophers. Last week I saw a coyote right out my window. But sometimes they stumble onto Halstead, and we don't give them homeschooling about what traffic means. And so we keep making changes, and we say, oh, now we don't have to drive 6 miles for Chipotle. Well, now we can only go 2 miles because another strip mall is going to put in the same kind of restaurant that we have to have right next to our coffee shop. But we don't realize what the impact is. And so when you start looking at the larger impact, you stumble across all kinds of grand information and sometimes personal challenges. Some of you are aware of award-winning advocate and author Temple Grandin. She's famous for her groundbreaking approaches to decoding animal behavior. She's applied neurostudies and research to help provide both a more compassionate process, for instance, for cattle farmers. For cattle farmers, and she has taught a process, and she's worked with the process of cattle that are going out to the slaughter and how you can treat them differently as they're going out to the slaughter. It changes the constitution of the meat that you will eventually eat, but it also, more importantly, changes the trauma for the animal that has previously been ushered through in little gates. And then how lovely and how amazing that she could take this learning and apply it to autistic children. And so some of you are aware, and this applies for some of your dogs, that everybody has anxiety now. And when a storm comes through, you know that some dogs and puppies, they get very anxious. And so you put on this little weighted blanket that's made just for them, and that calms them down. This all came from her studying of animals and cattle. And then it applies to our dogs, and it applies to autistic children, and it would have applied to your bank account if you would have thought of it in time, because now at Kohl's and Bed Bath & Beyond, there's all kinds of weighted blankets for us. We live in an anxiously provoked world, as our teens will tell you in so many ways. And so these blankets from Temple Grandin's research has a great impact. So some of you have become skilled observers. You've watched animal movement and behavior. And so you can apply that in different connections to what you do. I'm trying to remember. James Redfield wrote a book in the 80s, and it was called The Celestine Prophecy. What I love about the Celestine Prophecy is some of you, your hearts are bigger than your brains, metaphorically. And so you hear about a dog or a cat, and you might already have 5 cats and 3 dogs, and you think, I have to take that next animal in. In Celestine Prophecy, they indicated one of the Universalist laws even applies to volunteerism. Never take on more than the amount of your energy can respond to. So maybe some of you are able to handle 8 to 10 dogs and 3 cats and a goldfish. I, for instance, have 1 cat at a time that I worship. I guess I will have to find the name of that kind of religion where you worship your animal. And some of you have bigger hearts, or you have what we refer back to in the opening reading. You have connections. I don't see Ricky. Ricky, are you here? Ricky is looking for a tabby orange cat because her cat that she had for just a short time passed away. And so somebody out there knows exactly how to find an orange tabby cat. And so these kind of connections help all of us to be responsive to the needs of the animals. Why am I hesitating? Does anybody know? The clock is ticking away. Oh. So I have to take away too. So there is a new book out, and the doctor's name is Aisha Akar, and she examines the human relationship between animals and humans and how interspecies empathy enriches our well-being. So again, if you have interest in that book, let me know and I will email it to you. But it's called Our Symphony of Animals, with Animals. And it's the first book by a physician to show how deeply the well-being of humans and animals are intertwined. So I'll close with this story that I'm really aware of. The children in our schools are dealing with situations that we didn't have to deal with when we were growing up. So we can say, why are these kids so anxious? They don't know what's going to happen when they go to school. They've seen things on the news. Sometimes now what they're doing is that they're hiring and training dogs that meet the children at the door. And these dogs, this is their job, and they know what they're supposed to do. And it calms the children as they come in and pet the dog and can say good morning to the dog, and so they can start their day in a different way. This is part of what has happened with Dr. Ashtar's work. She demonstrates how humans are neurologically designed to not just empathize with animals, but how violence against them goes against our nature. So in equal measure, we can exchange love and friendship to other species. Any of you that have been a pet owner already know that. So this is, in closing, your invitation for action. What is your stretch in using what you heard today or what you know already to take ethics and statements and stories of compassion needed to live out our seventh principle and put them into some kind of action? What organizations have you already joined that have an impact on the beliefs that you have about animals and your protection over them? Share them with us. Have any of you changed your eating habits and take into consideration the ramifications of how the animals you eat are raised, fed, and killed? I've been a vegetarian for 40 years. I think I told you that my daughter took me in to her class one year as a project to show that vegetarians can be overweight. Most vegans can't be overweight, but I still eat cheese and dairy, which I'm sneezing a little more because of that. But what changes have you made in the way you choose what you're eating and what kind of impact it has on the circle of our animal friends? It's up to us to practice biodiversity. It's up to us to practice the seven principles. It's not easy to protect the sentient beings. Sometimes you have to get involved right in your neighborhood when you see something askew. I saw a dog fight and human fight and everything fight on my street in Sterile Heights, which is just like unheard of. And to know the specifics of the dog's characteristics, etc., and what went on. But one of the dogs ended up getting beaten by his master to drive a point home that they had done something wrong. It's very scary, and when do we have the courage to stand up for these pets? You love your pets, but for the need for advocacy and changes in our behaviors and changing some of the household approaches that we take for the animal families are up to you. I have to end with, are you up to the challenge? I was going to hear some of your stories, but instead I see Linda Brown saying, the congregational meeting needs to happen. I really appreciate your attention this morning, and the benediction is, change one thing about your behavior this week. It might not be in relationship to animals. It might not be in relationship to joining an organization. It might be waiting to say something judgmental and holding that in and saying something positive. It's up to you. Isn't that grand? We visited one of the 7 principles. And now we have the music that's called the crab. This is for all the cancers that are coming up in their birthdays in June.
Okay, so again, we need to check in and get the materials for the meeting. So we're going to have a brief interlude while you do that. Anybody who has been a member for more than 6 months is eligible to vote in the meeting. So please go back. And is there anybody who can help George Rourke check in? A volunteer for that? Irene is going to volunteer for that. Great, thank you. And as soon as everybody gets their materials and gets checked in, we'll start the meeting.